Welcome. Welcome to the study and the online course, the YouTube online course of economics by myself, the one and only ZP. Let's hopefully this endeavor will go well. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to the world of economics and hope you enjoy it. What is economics? That's the question I asked in the first slide, and the answer is as simple as economics is the study of choices that results from scarcity. What does this mean? It means that economics is a social science that takes a look into what people do as a result of scarcity. So there are a few questions, some may call them the core questions of economics. So should you work, right? Should people work? Should individuals work? And the answer is not as simple. There are plenty of factors that go into this answer, such as, should you specialize? Should you be a general worker, such as, just a worker? Or should you be an engineer? Should you go as far as saying a mechanical engineer? So should you specialize? Should you work for money? Should you work because it feels good? Should you work because it makes others better off? Another important question in economics is money wealth? So technically in economics, the accumulation of money equals wealth. However, not all wealth is money. All money is wealth, however. How to divide the products of labor? So what do we do with the stuff that comes out of work, right? The stuff, the goods and services that are a result of work. What do we do with them? So here's the idea of scarcity, right? There's not enough. And who gets what, right? That's another important question in economics. Who gets the goods and services that are produced? Who gets the wages? Who gets the money? Who gets the things, right? So it is important to remember a rule, and I would say this is like rule one of economics, is that there are two forbidden words in economics. So we call this the F words in economics, and they mean two things: free and fair. There is nothing in economics that's free, and whenever we're talking with any social scientist that knows about economics, the term free should not be used, because nothing, absolutely nothing, is free and fair. There is no such thing as fairness in economics. So I would say to remove these words from your dictionary anytime you talk about economics. So to get us started today, we're gonna take a look at the 10 economic principles, episode 1 of this series. So what are they? Principle number 1: scarcity is universal and unavoidable. What does this mean in basic words? You can run, but you can't hide from scarcity. There's always going to be not enough for everyone. For something to be considered scarce, right, to be defined as scarce and to actually qualify for this definition, it has to be in limited supply and desirable. Things such as toxic waste are not considered to be desirable, thus they're not scarce, right? You can have a lot of toxic waste, maybe in unlimited supply, but they are not considered to be scarce because they're not desirable. Principle number 2. And we build from principle number 1. Since scarcity is universal and unavoidable, we must make choices. And every single choice that we make involves cost. That it's as simple as that. In economics, we call this cost opportunity cost. That means that every time we make a choice, there's an opportunity cost attached to it, meaning that there is something we have to give up in order to get what we want. For example, you would like to buy a new TV. The opportunity cost of that TV is the money that you have to pay for it, or it can be the time that you're going to spend watching TV that you're not going to spend working. It can be plenty of things. It can be the time that it takes you to drive and pick up the TV. So, there is a German word that we use in economics in order to represent this. It's Tannstaffel. Tannstaffel, it's the word. And I'm going to write it as well. Tannstaffel. I mean, you may take a guess if you want to know what it means. But what this means is that there ain't such thing as a free lunch. There ain't such thing as a free lunch. That's what Tannstaffel means. And what this is saying is that even if somebody says, hey, let me take you to lunch, I'll pay for you, there's still a cost involved in that decision, because the time that you spend having lunch with this person means that you're not working, that you're not making money, you're not spending it with anyone else. The people who work in that place, they have to be paid, right? So there's a cost involved with that lunch. Your friend who took you out, they have to pay for you, right? So there isn't such thing as a free lunch. Third principle of economics. The economy is composed of billions of individuals that every single day, every single moment they interact with one another, each one pursuing their own self-interest. Well, what does this mean? This means that people go around making choices that also involve costs. As you can see, these choices also involve costs, and we call those choices, we call those costs opportunity cost. So this is one of the things that Adam Smith, the founder of economics, proposed, is that people pursue their own self-interest. And by doing this, they tend to make everyone better off. And that's something we'll study later in the long run, and we'll see. Fourth principle of economics. Prices determined by supply and demand direct scarce resources to their most valued uses. So what does this mean? It means that the prices that are a result of the supply and the demand, they give the scarce resources to their most valued uses. So we're going to study supply and demand, and we're going to see how those forces act. And there's going to be a market equilibrium, right? There's going to be a market equilibrium. That's what we call when supply and demand intersect. And that market equilibrium will give us a price. So those resources will be valued at a certain price, and that value will be determined by supply and demand. Principle number 5. Interfering with the price system creates a misallocation of resources. We will also see this down the line, but for example, we can say that we value a pencil at a price of $2, right? That's what we value the pencil. However, if the government were to say the value of this pencil is $4, then those resources would be misallocated, and we would have either a surplus, a shortage, or a market failure due to that interference with the price system and supply and demand. Principle number 6. So we ask ourselves then, if prices are determined by supply and demand, what is the correct? And here I would use this word interchangeably with fair or just. What's the fair, which we should not be using, right? Because they're the forbidden words in economics. What should be the fair or correct price of a good? So the answer is that value is purely subjective, right? We're looking at this in Econ terms. Therefore, prices are also subjective. The value of something and the price of something is literally however much you're willing to buy it and however much the producer is willing to accept, right? So if we're, again, the pencil example, if I sell you a pen at $2, it means that you value it at $2 and I value it at $2, thus the price becomes $2. But there isn't such thing as a correct price. Principle number 7. The specialization of labor and trade are sources of wealth. Well, this can be, a lot of big words: specialization, labor, trade. How do they help wealth? Basically, what happens is that specializing and trading leads to lower opportunity costs. And because those opportunity costs are lower, then we are wealthier, right? We are taking a look at what's the cost of working, what's the cost of exchanges, what's the cost of importing and exporting, right? And if we are able to lower the opportunity costs involved with those things and choosing to do those decisions, therefore, we're all wealthier. Principle number 8. Voluntary trade always benefits both parties. And this is an idea that was brought forward by David Ricardo, another big economic thinker, that said that trade is a win-win scenario. This means that trade benefits both parties. And whenever there's trade and exchange of goods, services, things, whatever, then both parties are benefited, the seller and the buyer. Principle number 9. Human beings will predictably follow positive and negative incentives. Some people say as simple as, I did write it down, that people are rational. That's the assumption. However, this is an economic assumption. That's a big word. That doesn't necessarily mean that all people are rational, but we're going to assume that for economic purposes. So whenever people are positively and negatively incentivized, they will respond and they will act in a certain way according to that incentive. Lastly, the 10th principle of economics is that intervention in economic markets, including government intervention, often results in unintended consequences. For example, rent controls. Rent controls tend to create slums. Why? We will see that later in another episode. I just wanted to say one thing, however, is that if you were to Google the 10 economic principles, you go on your phone, you put this into Google and say the 10 economic principles, you will not, and I repeat, you will not find the same ones I have. Why, you may ask? It's pretty simple. These are a bit tweaked. These are, let's say, kind of changed to provide a different perspective. I'm trying to show you something more than the classic classroom textbook definition, classic, boring, lame PDF from your Econ 101 class. I'm really trying to give a fresh, new perspective. I'm trying to show something different and show a perspective that isn't necessarily wrong. It's actually pretty correct because I can prove all of these 10 principles. But I just like to make clear that it's not that, they're not in Google, therefore you're wrong. No, all of these principles are true. However, I'm making them myself. A few of them. There are a few that are written, just change words, they mean the same. There are a few that I tweaked. I just wanted to make that clear before you say, hey, these are not the 10 economics principles. Yeah, they're not the 10 economic principles according to who, right? There is no right or wrong answer. They are my 10 economic principles. With this, I conclude this episode. I hope that you like it, and I hope that you stay tuned for more. Later down the line, you will see plenty more of this. See ya.